G'day everyone, Tarun Freestone here from Financial Freedom, breaking down the week that has been, coming to you wherever you are out there in the world, live and direct from Sydney, Australia. Micro strategies tanking, Bitcoin falling, and XRP surprisingly holding up well. So if you like my content, please like and subscribe. It really means a lot. And that will help push the YouTube algorithm and get my stuff out there to more people in the digital financial ecosystem. I will be bringing out perspectives and topics on the current crypto macroeconomic space. And just be advised, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Please consult with a financial advisor before you do anything to purchase crypto, as it is dangerous and can wreck you. So please do the right thing and consult someone who knows what they're doing, because I definitely don't. I just observe. Now, what I have observed is that the ETF has finally gone live. So let's have a big celebration, because we have been waiting and waiting and waiting on that one to come through for us. So it's exciting. I think $108 million was locked up. I do have the image here. I think it was Zach. He's on the case. 108 million locked up, and that's just going to keep propelling. 108 million XRP, that is, locked up. And this was a small one. My post that I was just showing you on screen, I have made details that this is a very small one, and the big boys are coming out with Bitwise, Grayscale, and CoinShares, as well as Franklin Templeton, hopefully coming through. Please give me a like and follow on Twitter, formerly known as Twitter. It's X. Please give me a like and follow me there for all of my postings in the space. One of the ones I want to point your attention to really quick before we launch on, $200 million under asset. So that's assets under management from Canary Capital, a smaller one for sure. And if you look down the list there, which is from, thanks XRB Crypto Wolf for this link, give him a like as well. We have 7 billion, 5 billion for Bitwise, and 21 shares respectively. Wisdom Tree's $113 billion, but Franklin Templeton's the big one coming around the corner here with $1.5 trillion assets under management. Everyone knows about Franklin Templeton. They were at Swell this year in New York, and they are the big cat, the big boy, the big bear, Michael Jordan in his prime. They are the ones that will push the locking up of XRP coins over the coming weeks. So this November is huge for us. It's a really big month, and I have only good feelings coming for that, my birthday month, this month, November. Let's launch into the price. It has done a little bounce since I've started recording. The current time is 3 p.m. here, Australian Eastern Standard Time. You guys in America will be dead asleep right now. You guys sort of wake up at 8 in the evening. It's about 9:30 our time, or 10 o'clock our time. You start yawning and getting out of bed. So we'll see how much it rebounds here. I really don't see any issues with Bitcoin dropping down. It's a volatile asset. It's buy the rumor, sell the news. And last time, look, if you've got your tinfoil hat on, like Zach says, and other people in the space, you'll know that buy the rumor, sell the news events occur all the time. And this is definitely one of those. During the ETF go live for Bitcoin, we had 13 days of continued down movement, and then eventually we had a year and a half going up. So I assume that we'll bounce around here. And what I love about XRP is, although Bitcoin has dumped, XRP has seemingly stayed really, really comfortable. This is my very rudimentary liquidity, we'll call them concavities or semi dishes, and the liquidity is holding it here. We might venture down to 190, but I don't see us going too far lower than that. And please do your own research if you want to purchase XRP. It is a volatile asset, and for my perspective, I think we'll have a big end to the year. But launching into 2026, I foresee XRP getting upwards and upwards of $5 pretty quickly. I don't have any evidence. I just have the performance of Bitcoin to go off. And I know people say it's crazy to think about a 20 or 30 or $100,000 XRP, but we already have a catalyst, which was a Bitcoin, which when I first saw it was $100 Australian. Did I buy any? No, but I knew that was something that could possibly change the world, and it has. Let's launch into a little wrap up of all the influencers that I follow around the world. We've got Encash first off the bat. He's showing us the way with the tentacles of Ripple as it's expanded. And I love the sentence that's in Crypto in America's interview with Brad. It's one you got to watch. 35 or 38 minutes of pure Garlinghouse power. And he says, if you look at what Ripple is doing, we are making traditional financial purchases of traditional financial institution such as G Treasury, Hidden Road, which is now Ripple Prime. Those are the right decisions to be making, especially when we launch into today's feature, which is a breakdown of Lewis Jackson. Lewis Jackson, I've known about for a while, and he's sort of dropped off the radar, but his most recent videos, I actually just mentioned him briefly in my last video. He's onto something big, and it's specifically to do with the private, closed-in world of private institutional settlement between, say, a JP Morgan and a Bank of America, and how they do it in a automated market space. And it links back into what Ripple have already got, which is an XLS document. I do have more insight on that. It was an XLS 30 they passed, and that allows them to become automated market makers and do clawbacks and the such, which really empowers them to serve, I would say, to serve that sort of institutional private ecosystem as a critical service provider. You'll be hearing that later in the video. So let's launch into it. Give these two a follow and a like and watch their content. It gives you a great overview of the macro environment, especially Paul Barron. He's blown up in the last year and a half, ever since he got on Jay Claver, absolutely killing it. Let's do a quick wrap up before we get into a review of Mr. Lewis Jackson's system here. Let me just pause one moment. Yeah, Lewis Jackson, the macro. There we are. He's reinvented himself, looking fresh. So I'll just jump through to the 5-minute mark where he has a little bit of a spiel here to do exactly the talking. Take it away.
Like, what is the point in XRP? And then the penny dropped. Ripple clearly understands this problem, and they have understood this problem. Every single move that Ripple keeps making, and I reflect back on the moves that they have made, it's all been in the pursuit of this one thing. And as I uncover the regulations and the different annexes of these different documents, I realize they know what they would do. They know what they're doing. They really know what they're doing. So I'm trying to communicate that to you because I've been deep in those documents, and I'm just going to tell you about them now. So Ripple clearly understood the problem that XRP was always going to have, trying to integrate itself into this private wholesale banking system. And as a result, they needed a Trojan horse. They needed a way to get into that system so that XRP can be at the heart of all of it. So they basically jammed their foot in the door here with RLUSD, the stablecoin created by Ripple. And if you imagine RLUSD is the Trojan horse and inside is XRP, no one really knows XRP is in there. That's just all about.
Roy, shout out to Brad Pitt and Eric Bana and Aussie Bloke. Great movie. Trojan.
The horse at this point. It's all about RLUSD. Because if Ripple wants to participate in this wholesale payments world, in the wholesale financial system, they must have an asset. They must contribute an asset that meets all of the regulations and is compliant with everything that the wholesale financial system need in an asset. Like if it's compliant with all of that, and of course we have signs that RLUSD is compliant because it's already been accepted in Dubai. And these are just proving grounds so that Ripple can take RLUSD to the wider financial system and say, hey, look, we're already accepted in Dubai, so let's just get this moving. So if all of the banks are using their own tokens to actually settle these transactions, that's JP Morgan's deposit tokens or the stable coins that are going to come out of Japan or the UK with Finality, Ripple's stablecoin, RLUSD, will also be part of that conversation as a compliant asset in that whole world. So you might be thinking, okay, but what about XRP? Like we've kind of left XRP out the system. You've got the private system and XRP is still there lingering in the public zone. Like what's going on? Well, here's where it becomes.
I will let you guys go to that. Give it a like, subscribe. It's fantastic. Excellent work by Lewis Jackson. I love how he's broken it down, and I had to watch it a few times to actually get it, and I fancy myself a reasonably intelligent bloke. It's quite convoluted, but like I say, we've got the public network, we've got the private world, and if JP Morgan want to send Bank of America some of their deposits, I thought it was just US dollars. Apparently, there is another way that this works, and the Bank of International Settlements have a rubric, a guideline about how you can do this. And what they say is you prefer to use a low liquidity risk asset, but it has to be most likely in a native currency to the bank. Now, simply put, imagine you had JP Morgan coin, you had Bank of America coin, you would still need a conversion asset. Now, he launches into discussing what the conversion asset is. Obviously, it's XRP. Now, it's pretty full on, but with reference to a document called Principles for Financial Market Infrastructure, he explores how in Annex F, it defines what infrastructure is. And his push with this video is to make us realize that we shouldn't be trying to ask for XRP as a currency because it has a really big issue. The Bank of International Settlements has a real big issue bringing in a currency that is not native to that private world, the JP Morgan coin or the Bank of America coin or the deposit or the Euro digital CBDC, whatever it is. They want to keep that locked in. What you can call it is you can call it a critical service provider, and how you do that, they don't want to know. They don't need to know. Let's launch in a little bit more to that. In this Annex F, in the BIS, financial market infrastructure playbook, there's three things: policy validation, and you can do this in three ways. You need to do three things. Firstly, policy validation, which is revolving around an experiment that is done by a reputable board. So we have one in Singapore. It's called Guardian. It's specifically use of tokenized bank liabilities for transaction banking. The Bank of England is doing an experiment in their digital sandbox facilities, digital sandbox facilities, and it facilitates the use of developing technology such as distributed ledgers in the issuance, trading, and settlement of securities. There are banks using specific intermediary companies that will do the transference, right? So there's one called FN Finality that he references. They still need a conversionary asset in the middle. Now, the XLS30 was a huge play by Ripple before that allows them to do those clawbacks, but also allow them to hold a marketplace where JP Morgan coin, Bank of American coin can come. They would pre-fund XRP off the market, and it would act as that conversionary bridge that it cannot be used for anything else. Now, JP Morgan coin and Bank of America coin don't even actually have to know the mechanics behind it underneath. They just need to know that it is policy validated. So what these two experiments would be doing is providing two documents. So the experiment, let's say Bank of England does this digital sandbox experiment, they would issue something called legal finality opinion, and then they would do a supervisory oversight statement. They could then give these to Ripple, and Ripple would take those two objects, approach private institutions and say, hey, look, the Bank of England has given these two documents that allow us to do what you think you would think us need to be able to do in order to facilitate an environment that allows that conversion between your two coins, be they CBDCs or JP Morgan coins or whatever. The second part of the puzzle, there's three parts in Annex F of the BIS document that would need you to be adhering to. The second part is prove you're out of the way, out of the private environment, and only act as a conversion asset in a critical service provider manner. Now, I'm just going to let him speak on it because he does it way better than I am, and I'm filibustering a little. So let's go to the 15th minute where he brings it in. And if I may, I might just let him play until it's all fleshed out. The final third part is finally operational assurance. Prove you can take the stress of a small or a huge amount of inflow or outflow. These three this would be serviced in three key documentations that you would publish, and it leads back into a point that I should have made at the start of this video, which is set your Google alerts. If you don't know how to do that, I can show you how to do that, but set your Google alerts for Ripple, XRPL, and the three words are a wind down plan, equity buffer, and detailed incident response procedure, because those three documents, once you've been published, you can do what needs to be done, and you can tell those institutional private ecosystems, I can service what you need, and I'm compliant based on these 3 documents and those other 2 documents from an experiment, and prove that I'm out of the way and I'm just providing you this asset that's locked off from the rest of the public space. It might even be, to my mind, it might even be price independent. So it may, like we'd know in private ledgers, it may have different cost. It might be worth $1 million a coin. It might be worth, whatever. It could do those things. So let's have a listen to Lewis, and let's grab a tea with tea, and let's listen to the big boy.
They made it to be compliant with the wholesale banking system, because when it came time, you were going to have to make these markets, like these central bank digital currency markets, like a JP Morgan coin and Citibank coin, or JP Morgan coin and the digital pound, whatever it is. Markets need to be made, and those markets need to be hosted somewhere where there is a native conversion asset. I think you're piecing this together with me. And those assets have to be pre-funded into accounts, so taken out of circulation to fund that market. Every conversion asset that is held in those accounts to make those markets must be frozen there and used for no other reason. So that means every market between every CBDC that doesn't talk to each other, every bank issued token or deposit token that doesn't talk to each other, will require a conversion asset in the middle that is frozen in place and pre-funded for that purpose. Obviously, that's quite exciting. And that AMM infrastructure in XLS 30 has allowed now a new way to root value in that private world. And the Trojan horse is part of that as well with RLUSD. Therefore, allowing XRP to participate in the private world, in this wholesale world, without being an asset that's actually on these central banks' books, because it's not a currency. It's not a settlement asset, because they want the settlement asset. They want the currencies. Instead, it is a conversion asset. It's a really key distinction, and I'm going to close that loop in just a second here, and it's all going to go, oh, that's really cool. And I'm going to tie that in a second. We talked about how RLUSD is already compliant in Dubai. So they're making an asset that is wholesale system friendly and allows RLUSD to flow through the systems that the big banks are already building. There is no avoiding what they're building. All we have done is got the big horse through the gates. XRP's underneath, and they don't know it yet. And in fact, not only do they not know it yet, we don't need them to know. They don't even need to know. Now, there is an interesting thing happening, I mentioned it earlier, that is allowing public or retail financial systems to work inside the wholesale systems as well. And
I'll just skip over that because he mentions Chainlink, but he says it's a cherry on top. But the real money we got to go for is the institutional closed environments where they settle between themselves, and we offer as a critical service provider. That's where the money's at.
Additionally, as long as the technology that's being used in between doesn't come up on their books from their side, from a settlement and finality standpoint, they don't care. They just need it to be very reliable and do its job. So the ego that we have for XRP to be a currency in the global financial whatever we're saying now is actually hindering XRP's progression. Because as soon as you name it that way, the regulators and the banks receive it that way. And they go, oh, that's not what we want. We've got our own thing for that. Thank you. And then the conversation's over. But if we can hush down about it, make it as a critical service provider, and check these marks off that we're going to get into now under the Annex F document that I've shown on screen, and maybe I'm showing it now, we end up getting XRP out of the Trojan horse and simply running the city. Like running the city, and nobody really knows. The whole reason the whole city is standing up in the first place is because of XRP as a critical service provider. Just quietly underneath, it's the rails, not the loud people on the train. So that naturally leads into question number 3. What actually has to happen next for XRP as infrastructure, if we're talking about it as infrastructure, to be regulator blessed? Like if it's to become a critical service provider, what has to happen? And well, there are 3 requirements. If the XRP and XRP can meet these requirements, it can then be considered as a critical service provider and basically run the entire system. Number 1 is policy validation. So what I mean by that is, you've got Project Guardian. You might have heard of that from Singapore. You've also got the UK's Digital Security Sandbox. These are testing environments, basically experiments by these big entities. And I specifically mentioned the ones that are most important. And it basically shows public chain inflow into the private chains. And it's testing the capabilities of doing that. And so what happens after these live pilots is that you'll get the likes of Project Guardian from the Monetary Authority of Singapore. They will release a document, and that document is called a legal finality opinion. And they also give a supervisory oversight statement. These 2 documents and what is inside of those, saying, this was a success for these reasons, are incredibly important, because you take those documents and you can take them over to the private banking section and say, hey, we're making a claim here that our company has a software underneath that's going to be a critical service provider. We think we can provide this critical service to the wholesale banking system. Look, we have the legal finality opinion, and we have the oversight statement as well from these two big sandbox experiments. You would need XRPL and XRP to participate in these sandboxes and these projects. And then we need that opinion piece and the report. But that's the first piece. And the second,
we know for a fact that XRP is being used by the Bank of England in trials. They have a great affinity with the Bank of England, and they've been used by them for several years now.
Part of this has to do with when I talked about settlement earlier. You need to be able to prove that the asset doesn't operate inside the wholesale system. So we mentioned that XRP is sitting outside of the wholesale system on the public chain, but then meaning that the banks and the wholesale system can essentially say, yeah, we have our own settlement tokens. That's all good. We want to keep only the assets in the wholesale system that we recognize and trust. And if you can prove that XRP actually does sit outside of that system, acknowledging that it doesn't meet the requirements for Principle 9 in that Bank of International Settlements document, then you're good to go and you're kind of cleared to say, okay, as long as you're not trying to get through this Principle 9, then we're fine because we want to control everything in here. And what that means is the XRP layer sits outside of that system and outside of that settlement moment, which the banks are very precious about, and acts only as a conversion mechanism, as a critical service provider. And then,
okay, love the guy. This is the most important part for me. I'm trying to figure out the settlement moment because I've only heard Schwartz and everyone say we are the settlement asset and all this sort of thing. So now we are changing the narrative to get our heads and our necks into a space which you can't use currency in that's not, a CBDC to another CBDC. Let's say that. This is the money market that we're talking about. Yes, we can lock things away in ETFs and that's all going well as we've been doing the last couple days, and I am excited about that. But we always wanted all the money. We always talked about coming for trillions of dollars of value. And if we get the private institutions to utilize XRP in some manner, even if they don't know they're doing it, that is going to accelerate that even further and further. Why not? It's a really intelligent piece of software. It should be able to do that. You're talking about somehow having XRP allow conversion between two assets, be it a digital CBD euro and a digital CBD pound. Are you saying that on the ledgers, British pounds will be settled as British pounds and the value, what XRP is, I'm just trying to get my head around it. It doesn't make that much sense. This is the critical thing. I want them to elaborate on further, but this is way above my pay grade. It's way above our pay grade. How is XRP converting and just providing? It's like, okay, I've got 3 euros, but I'm only going to get 2 pounds, right? So I will give you 8 XRP because that's what the value should be. And now it goes from one pre-funded account underneath the Euro Digital CBDC. So there's 2 accounts. One has the euros in it. So all of a sudden euros disappear. 8 XRP come over to the Great British Pound. And then all of a sudden that allows the Bank of, Lloyds or Barclays to propagate 2 Great British Pounds on their ledger because they have that liquidity in their particular XRP box. So XRP, call it E for England, and let's call it XRP Europe, XRP Britain. So we got E and B. So Europe get the E. That account is different to the top dollar account. So I think settlement is going to occur between a top dollar account. So we've come from euros, they've disappeared. You've taken the XRP across. XRP is now in the British XRP account. I, as the Bank of Lloyds or Barclays, can propagate 2 pounds, and then the settlement is actually settling into an external account for someone else. I don't know. So because to me, settlement's happening between the 2 XRP accounts, right? So it is still settling. And I think in Crypto Sensei's breakdown, he does allude to that this is a very interesting concept. So I'm interested to see about it. Hey, the more the merrier, the more we can lock up, the more we get to burn, the more you and I get to pump the bags.
Third of all, you have something called operational assurance. Like I said earlier about Annex F, in order to meet the criteria for Annex F, you have to have some security here. You have to know that the system can handle the stress. And so in order to prove that the system can handle the stress, there are 3 documents, that specific documents that Ripple or the XRP would have to publish and prove in order to be treated as a conversion asset or a critical service provider. And those documents are, I'm going to read them on the screen here, wind down plans, equity buffers, and a detailed incident response procedure. This covers everything about the public chain, essentially telling the private chain, the wholesale system, hey, we might be public chain, but we can actually handle the stress and we do everything in accordance to how you would want it done. It's super secure. We can handle massive inflows. We can handle minimal inflows. And even with the new updates that happened to this document on November the 7th this year, like literally a couple of days ago, we are still compliant and we can still follow the guidance. And if we can meet those standards, you can classify XRP as a critical service provider, silently working underneath everything, allowing the whole system to work. Now, Ripple hasn't published those documents yet. So if there's any time to put a Google search alert on your computer, it's now for those wind down plans, the equity buffers, and the incident response procedure documents published by Ripple or the XRPL. Because if you see these documents actually published and released, anyone else in the world might go, oh, like, that's so boring, like not even pay attention to it. But you know now that if these three documents get released or these three elements get done.
Yeah, look, I just want to touch on this video, how to live off your XRP without selling it. I love this video from Jake Claver. It breaks it down really eloquently with great, very to the point detail and clarity. So please give that a look if you can. And I just want to touch on a few other videos before we go. Crypto Sensei is breaking down something from Verzan Capital, Black Swan Capital with Verzan Ali, Aljara, and I would love you guys to go check that one out. It sort of touches on the more traditional lens, which is not the one that Lewis is covering, where we're trying to get into this private space. It's more generic, it's more widespread. But the video that I will later on watch today is, does XRP have a competitor? Which I obviously doubt very much so, but it's good to know all sides of the stories. Let's quickly just touch base on the current performance of the next few weeks and months. I think it's important to look at what we know from the history of, firstly, the government shutdown ending, as well as death crosses, which will be touched on in a second. We can clearly see that every time a government shutdown has ended, we have gone on a parabolic run in the coming 4 or 5 months. Okay, so buckle up, buy the dip, up and to the right. Okay, everyone is on this one, guys. Ponzi schemes left, right, and center, but make sure that you pick the right one. The US dollar Ponzi scheme? I don't know. Ask the Federal Reserve. Look, I just want to touch base on this one little thing. Please give me, guys, a like on Twitter, formerly known as Twitter. It's called X.
The death cross marked the exact low of that bear market and XRP exploded.
Let's go from the
We
start.
just had a death cross on XRP's daily time frame, but this is actually bullish and not bearish, because in 2017 it marked the exact low of that specific bear market and XRP exploded. Also in 2020, the death cross marked the exact low of that bear market and XRP.
We'll point out that that is a lot longer than what Bitcoin took. We can see there it's almost a whole year and another massive up and down fluctuation. So for us XRP people, we as I said, 1.5 years from now, we will see double-digit XRP. How quickly we get there, I don't know. Maybe we'll hit $30 and come back to $10, but I would feel more comfortable in a year and a half based on what we've seen with Bitcoin. We can only go based on what's happened in other parts of crypto as well as the stock market. But guys, the writing is on the wall here for all of us. We've waited a long time. We can wait another year to get, triple digits if that so be the case.
XRP exploded, and right now, once again, guys, we are seeing the death cross, so XRP is most likely about to go much higher. We just had a death cross on XRP's daily time frame, but this is actually bullish.
Thank you, Steph is Crypto, on that one. Thank you guys for joining in. Like I said, this is not financial advice. Please consult a financial advisor. I know a couple of good ones work at Digital Wealth Partners for Jake Claver, not a plug. Please do your own research, do your due diligence. I'm not a financial advisor. This has been Tarun Freestone for Financial Freedom. Stop by next week where we wrap up all that was in the crypto space. Enjoy these ETFs, and I'll catch you on the flip side.